The Buffalo Sabres are on a 3-game win streak. No game tonight, though, as they prepare for a back-to-back this weekend. They take on Philly tomorrow at 1 p.m. Jason Zucker, after missing yesterday due to a family matter, was back on the ice today, and Josh Dunn has been sent back to Rochester. Paul Hamilton has more on yesterday's win up at our website, WGR550.com. In the NHL tonight, just 6 games, some notables. Carolina has Montreal in town, and Vancouver's in Columbus to take on the Blue Jackets. Both those games are at 7. 8:30, see Chicago host Las Vegas, and then at 10, the Rangers are in California to take on the Ducks. To college football, Colorado is giving head coach Deion Sanders a 5-year, $54 million contract. Sanders is just 13-12 in his 2 years at Colorado, but they did improve to 9-4 last year, a season that saw Travis Hunter win the Heisman Trophy. And in the season prior to Sanders being hired, the team just won 1 game. Mets and Blue Jays, they are in action today. Toronto hosts Baltimore. First pitch just after 7 p.m. And the Mets are down in Houston versus the Astros. Start time for that game is at 8 o'clock. Also in baseball, Bison's opening day this afternoon. They are home against Rochester. That game is underway and tied 1-1 in the 4th. You can hear the rest of that game over on our sister station, the Bet 1520. And then coming up tonight right here on WGR, the second half of the Sweet 16 games for the men's NCAA tournament. At 7, Ole Miss versus Michigan State will get it underway. 7:30, Kentucky versus Tennessee. 9:30, Auburn taking on Michigan. And the night will finish out with Houston versus Purdue. And a reminder that coverage of the NCAA Championship Tournament on WGR and the Bet 1520 is brought to you by Window Nation. For all your window needs, visit windownation.com. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
My dad's not here right now. He's still at work. So I'm going to blast him.
Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
I'm going to see if there's a clean version so that my parents and the people at my school will not get mad at me. We've got the spritzer filled with water just in case if stuff gets too fire. I'm going to set up the speaker and I'm going to listen to
Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
I think this is the best
Mike Schopp
feature that I've heard in a long time. I think his flow is really good in it, and I like his aggressiveness on it, and
the Bulldog.
Put not enough effort in it. I think overall his flow was good, but I don't like that mumble rapping. That was my review of
Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Didn't need the spritzer. Wasn't fire enough. No spritzer for you. No spritzer.
That kid probably sounds much different now. How old is that? 10 years? Everything's 10 years for me. Say it's 10 years. The kid probably sounds, oh, he's the ambassador to, I don't know. He's probably, older. What a take. Let's start on that note. Bulldog is off again today. I really enjoyed yesterday talking about baseball and backstories that I and many of you had. I really was glad to get as much feedback on that as I did. Why you love the team you love. Like, what's that story? Might even be able to fit in some more of that today. I did say yesterday at one point, since we were doing, love, basically, today we should do hate. Why you hate the teams that you hate, if you do actually hate. I know you're not supposed to hate, but it's fun to hate, right? It's just sports. It's pretty harmless. And I think it's also kind of easy, right? Who are you supposed to hate? You're supposed to hate, well, right now it's the Chiefs, right? You gotta hate the Chiefs. I'm more jealous than I am sort of hating on them, but sure, close enough. New England was this. New England was, to me, much more hateable than, these are football teams, by the way, much more hateable than Kansas City is. Just because it felt dirty, the Patriot thing, in a way that the Chiefs thing really doesn't at all, I think, anyway. But that's dissipated, and if it's not Kansas City, the Bills have been so good, it makes it, sort of you don't need as much to hate the other teams. Even the Ravens, for as good as the Ravens have been, the Bills have beaten them twice in the playoffs. They've beaten them when it counts, so I don't know, you can hate them, I guess, but it seems kind of weird to. The Bills have lorded over the division, so unless it's nostalgic, Dolphins, Jets, it's a little bit manufactured, I think it would be for me. So football, I'm kind of not there in terms of hate for almost anybody. baseball, so we did this for baseball yesterday, and it's kind of the same for me. I mean, I'm not so attached to a team. When I was really into the Mets, I mean, there were teams that I hated. I had just that few years where the Yankee dynasty happened in the late 90s where I just kind of hated all of that. But now, I mean, I watched a lot of baseball yesterday. I don't like the Yankees, but it's not intense, really. It's more casual for me. Basketball, I'm so far away from it, college pro, that I just don't have really strong feelings at all. Like even sort of for a Duke, that people hate Duke, but I don't care that much about it. And then hockey, I think I've decided the number of teams I hate in the NHL tends to range between 31 and 32. Sometimes it's all of them. Sometimes it's all but one. Right now, I'm kind of feeling a little better. Maybe you are too. It's closer to 31 right now. I am just so jealous and bitter about the rest of the league and all the teams that, have had cups out of St. Louis the one year with O'Reilly. Like, how could you enjoy that? Unless it's really out of spite toward the Sabres, and that just doesn't feel good either. I mean, I have here and there, but it doesn't feel good to these Vegas winning with Eichel and Washington even. That was not a Sabre thing. Florida. It's just been awful. And I kind of hate everybody in the NHL. Nobody in baseball, nobody in football mostly, everybody, even the Sabres at times in hockey. Who's going to be, here we go, So they're hot right now. Even with like James Reimer in goal, they're winning games. And who knows, maybe that will continue. Philadelphia's bad, that's tomorrow. Are they going to do the thing where they get like right to the edge and the season will end? Are they going to actually do that? Like they have 11 games left. Are they going to win 8 and get within, what would that be? 3-4 points? Could that happen? I don't know. Just somebody, it's everything. When the Sabres it hasn't been that many times in 14 years, but like just out like 2 years ago, Florida was the team, and they went on a run to the finals. There's probably there maybe have been 5 Islanders teams that have made the playoffs in the Sabres drought, none of which were like really any good. But you got to watch that in the playoffs, and they're in, and teams like that, teams that really are not as well supported. I don't really know what this is anymore. For a while, it was kind of what we did to make fun of the Sunbelt teams, and Arizona was always an easy mark for this. Even they would get to the playoffs sometimes, but just sort of teams that really don't feel like they have that many fans, but there they are in the third round or something. Expansion teams, of course, now with Seattle. Seattle has won a playoff series. Vegas won a cup. I kind of hate everybody. And it doesn't feel good. Doesn't feel good. Football, nobody. Almost. Baseball, nobody. Hockey, everybody. There it is. Who's going to be the team? Ottawa, maybe. They're going. Montreal. I'll talk to Chad DeDominicis later. Who maybe it's a list. Some team is going to the playoffs that maybe are not as good as the Sabres, which is just another space on the board here for this franchise for all these years of missing. It's not going to be the Penguins. It's not going to be Philadelphia. But maybe it's the Islanders. Maybe it's the Canadiens. Maybe it's the Red Wings, teams that just do not really impress at all and give you another round of why not us? Just one of these times. If you do have a take on them, I've got 3 guests today, and so we're not going to be able to really stretch out, but I'm here for it now. These games at the end of the season, when they win, they're just so conflicting. For me, anyway. Maybe not for you. Maybe it's an easy time to go in there and they're up 7-1 or something, and it's like, this is just fun. It would have been. I wasn't there. It would have been fun in the middle of that game. I doubt I would have been. I'm not so. It's so dark that 7-1 in the second period. I'm just like, another year. But you have when you process it, it does get to that. And that doesn't feel good either. So what they've done with the signings and the whole seeming organizational approach this year is to focus on themselves, internal, keeping their guys, because we can't get others. It's hard, so we're not going to do that. We're not going to maybe, I don't know, embarrass ourselves trying to dabble in free agency or, strike out on trades. Not that we ever really know when that happens, but we just sort of see the bottom line. And the whole thing about how at 5-on-5 they're above average in the league, just the special teams and at times goaltending this year, it's always something. So that's what you had, the big losing streak, and it still seems like almost impossible that they'll be able to survive this year. I don't know the percentage. I gave up on it when it, a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was, when they started with the 5-game chunks. And then they lost 2 or 3 in a row. Like, I'm out. So maybe I don't even know if it's not 0. I haven't heard that it's official, so I'll go with that. Chad will know. Maybe you know. 803-0550 is the number. So yeah, I don't feel good about any NHL team. I'm sick of watching. Name them. Want me to list them? Just the teams that I lost to growing up: Boston, Philadelphia, those teams, gross. They always will be gross. The teams that are kind of bad but get in the playoffs when I can't, get out of my way. Just I hate you. The teams that, like the Lightning. How about the Lightning? Do you hate the Lightning? That's harder, isn't it? I do, because they built something when I couldn't, which is like half the league. They built something when I couldn't. And then, because I had something, but I let it get away. So the Lightning built a thing, and then there was like every year where, well, they're going to be in cap jail or something. They're going to have to start over, rebuild, dump good players, and they kind of always stayed good. One coach for a long time, well, the Sabres used to have that, and he's back, of course, but just stability and that really seemingly clean reputation. Tampa. And a couple of these years recently, I've sort of hoped that they would falter so that I could move in. Didn't happen. So we got to hate them. The teams that took our stars and won, I guess I made the point. Yeah. Sam Panayotovich coming up at 3:30, back from Vegas. We got the tournament tonight, well, this weekend. Still seeing the favorites win there. We'll ask him what he sees happening. I don't know if Sam bets hockey, but I'll ask him, see what he might be thinking about. I've got one thought I wanted to run by him. It's Friday. We've talked a lot this week. Sal on 2 or 3 times talking about what's left for the Bills here and the draft, now less than a month away. And with Sal yesterday, I asked him for predictions on, or better put, like what's the most likely outcome for Cook and for Benford. Or not for Benford. I didn't ask him about Benford. I asked him about the other cornerback position. Like what's the most likely thing, likely way this will play out. And he said at corner, they probably sign somebody, a veteran, and then also in the draft. And so you're sort of back on your feet, if you will, at that position. And with Cook, I laid out what I think is most likely to happen there. And if I remember right, Sal at least mostly agreed with this, but it's still, we're guessing at it, that there ultimately is a deal between the Bills and the player for what will look like really good money for a running back, and the hardcore running backs don't matter people will probably, be fired up about it. Still, though, the increasing cap, as we've seen play out with big contracts again this year all over the league, everything just always goes up. And Cook and his value to the Bills. And I did also ask Sal, like, all right, so worst case, if you consider it the worst case, that Cook doesn't come back. Like he just sort of hardline and will not play for less than 15, whatever it is. Like he's just not here. This could happen through an injury too, but let's just say he's not on the field. What does it look like? And, Sal sort of talked for a few seconds and then he kind of said, their offense is probably about the same. And that's how I feel too. So if you get there, see that what's maybe challenging about it from the team standpoint is I feel like Brandon Beane and the Bills should also think that. And they could think that about any player on the team even, except for Allen, that because of Allen, you're going to be fine. And I suppose there can be limits to that. But I think mostly there aren't. I think, like I've said for years, you have that quarterback. The worst you should ever do is the middle. And to get in the middle, it's last year's Bengals, where, I mean, Burrow isn't quite Allen, I would say, but still, like, he's pretty elite. And they won 9 games, even with a defense that couldn't, just handle it all, couldn't manage it all, and close losses. They still end up on the cusp of the playoffs, despite what was a pretty difficult season. Like, that to me would be the worst this could go. And I don't think James Cook matters really in this too much. You have him, you don't. I think you're probably the same. If you can't run the ball, last year they could. If you can't run the ball and you think it's because like you don't have him for whatever reason, and you might have a lineman injury or two, and you have to throw more, you have to be more of a passing team like the Bills used to be, all right, well, I'd expect that to be fine. I would expect that to, work. So then, like, what's challenging, as I started to say, you've got a player that has been important, or quote important, right? He's been productive. He's been a big part of who they are and what they've accomplished, especially last year. And so you want to acknowledge that and respect that. But if you think at the same time it's pretty replaceable, then what do you do? Then you might end up sort of to yourself kind of rolling your eyes and spending the money. And like, okay, well, this is probably not ideal, but the risks of not doing it are such that, all right, I'll just do it. Here's your $30 million for 3 years or whatever it is that comes to. I think that's how I would expect it to go, because I don't know, I'd be a little surprised if Beane thought that they had to have him. You think it works like that? I don't know. I'd be surprised if he thought that. I think what you've seen with the Bills is, an appetite for replacing, churning at that position through the draft. They've done it, is it not at least 4 years in a row? I mean, you start with Singletary, then you go to Moss, then you go to Cook, and then you go to Davis. And, you've had, remember, Damian Harris, you had Latavius Murray, just sort of like having a committee, if you will, and then adding somebody from the draft every year. And this year, especially with their pick allotment, seems like the best year yet to do that, where you can go into Saturday and probably get somebody really exciting. That's one thing I want to talk to Sigmund Bloom about. I think the running backs are probably my favorite topic about this draft right now. Kind of ironic because I've had such a indifferent attitude toward the position for a while, except for when I can, tweak Bulldog with it. And you just give me anybody. Remember Ian Hartitz last week talked about maybe the Bills picking a running back on day 2, and I just sort of latched onto that for as long as I could. Can we just talk about this, please? We've got somebody who said it. Let's just talk it out. We've got somebody, just give me an Albert Breer tweet or something. Just anybody who brings up the idea. First round especially. We had that with Travis Etienne a few years ago. Like, oh, baby. McCaffrey trade rumors, and I don't know. That's a lot of fun. But I think the depth at running back this year is my favorite thing to talk about with this draft. And this is not really going to probably matter to the Bills very much. They're not one of those teams where you have a glaring need, at least as far as we know. That could be what maybe they know on the inside when it comes to Cook, but you're not hearing that or expecting that at all. I think the Bills draft, by the way, at this point, is probably one that and I'll explain this if I feel like I need to, but it's just kind of there. Not, we're not talking too much about skill positions, or necessarily like big impact. You want a couple of starters from this thing, ideally, picks 2 of the top 3. We have the late first, then you have 2 seconds. You want to get a starting defensive lineman there. I heard saw a new name today from a PFF mock draft, Derek Harmon of Oregon. We've talked about a couple of other guys, interior defensive line. This is another one. I don't know anything about him, but that was just a name I saw today in a mock draft. And then cornerback 2 and someone else where, you want to just you want to be respectable, at least. You want to be better than that in this if you can get there, but at least just, not what happened with Elam, where you really couldn't ever put him on the field. It was that bad. So you'd like above replacement level here from 2 or even these 3 first picks that the Bills have. Corner, D-line, obviously that's what everybody's been talking about. And it's not that isn't interesting, but last year was almost, for picking so late, last year was about as interesting as it can get, where you had all the different receivers that people had strong opinions about and varying opinions about. We'd have, guests on almost every day, and we'll be doing that here for the next few weeks as we get closer again. But you had people who thought Keon Coleman was great, and then others who didn't, and that's Worthy. And that was Brian Thomas because of his yards per route run thing, and A.D. Mitchell, and Worthy, of course, that was the one that really was the story at the end of it, along with Coleman, is all right, what's going to happen with Xavier Worthy? So there are receivers in this thing. I haven't gotten to a point yet where I think the names that we talk about the most, the names that you hear the most, from McMillan and Hunter, of course, who's way out of reach. McMillan will be out of reach also, it seems, but Matthew Golden, Luther Burden, and so on. There are a couple of new names that have emerged there. I just haven't gotten to a point where I see the Bills in consideration, or they in consideration for them, first 2 days, possibly the second round, which is where some of those guys will end up. I don't think that's out of the question, but I just really don't see it at pick 30. So defense, interesting, important, needed, but hasn't been as interesting yet to me to talk about. It's just the nature of the position. You're really talking more about when receiver. I think the way I see it, it's size, but it's also skills, agility, separation ability, contested catch, speed, that kind of thing. You sort of stack up the traits, the stats, and try to find the guy that you think is the best fit. Whereas that generally is true at defensive tackle. I'm sure a scout or Bean himself could tell you maybe he would tell you it's the same. You're just looking at the same. It's the same kind of process, but not as much of a range, not as much variance as we had. Part of it, I guess, is that how many receivers were in play for when the Bills picked? 10 different guys. The ones that went at the top were not. But once you got to Brian Thomas, who was, by the way, outstanding as a rookie for Jacksonville, that looks like a huge hit. But from Thomas all the way down through those early second-round guys, including Coleman, including Worthy, just lots of different flavors, so to speak. We'll see. We'll have a few weeks here to kick around more ideas. All right, coming up, Sam Panayotovich, Sigmund Bloom today, Chad DiDomenicis as 3 great names. Sam Panayotovich, Sigmund Bloom, Chad DiDomenicis. Was this just Mike picking guests based on how cool their names are? No. But it did work out that way, I would say. Thanks for being with me. Any news, of course, we'll hit you with that, and we'll talk to Sam about the tournament, some NFL stuff. Win totals for next year, and the Bills are as high a number as anybody. We'll get into that as well with Sam after this first break. Good to have you along today. This is Mike Schopp. Bulldog is off through Monday. You're listening to WGR.
Williams corkscrews up, off, and down! It's a 2-point lead. Final seconds. Wagner with it. Driving on Hawkins. Firing off. Texas Tech has won.
Great game in the tournament last night. Texas Tech over John Calipari and Arkansas. Was not as good as it probably was. I didn't watch it. The best basketball finish of the night, though. You need to see the end of Lakers Bulls if you haven't. This game was 115-110 LA with 12 seconds to go. 115-110. And the final in regulation was 119-117 Chicago. Bulls 3, steal, Bulls 3, Lakers inbound, layup, desperation half court, Bulls good to win it. No disrespect to Texas Tech and Arkansas. Here is Sam Panayotovich on the West Her hotline. I think back from Vegas. A week plus would be a long time to be in Vegas. I think we agree on that. Was it great on the whole, Sam?
Oh, yeah, but I'm rested and recovered. I flew back Sunday night. I do this thing where I fly back. I leave Vegas about 4 or 5 o'clock. I land in Boston after midnight, and there's always a crying baby 2 rows in front of me. It's the best.
That happened again? That streak continued?
It keeps happening, Mike. Who flies late night red eye with a baby? That's insanity.
You do what you've got to do, I guess. Sam Panayotovich with us here on the West Her hotline. Bet Sweats, Odyssey Sports Betting Insider. Insider calls presented by BetMGM. Check out the latest lines today on the BetMGM app. And be sure to catch Bet Sweats live 9 to noon daily on the newly rebranded BetMGM network and on the Odyssey app. Did I see something about $60 nachos?
They were $68, and we didn't have a choice because I will say MGM took care of a lot of things. They got the rooms. They put us up here. They put us up there. But when we got to the pool, the food was full price. And these nachos were $68, but they tasted like they were $38, if you know what I mean. And the cheese-to-chip ratio was horrible. Somebody actually asked, because we were talking about it on the show on Monday. We were recapping our trip. And I put the picture up on my Twitter, at SPShoot, if you want to see the nachos. They're fine, but $68, I mean, I can go to a nice steakhouse in Buffalo and get a ribeye, you know?
Yes. Is it for one person, or is it to share?
No, it's for like 6, but
okay.
It's not the point. You know that's not the point.
No. Yeah, right, of course, nachos. Like the Sabres have 2-foot nachos, is it, that they sell? I'm sure it's not $68. What's the meat then?
So they either gave you the option to do carne asada or chicken, and we did the steak. It was fine. I don't want to sound bougie. You know, I've never paid $68 for nachos, and I hope I never have to do it again.
Fair enough. Okay. The tournament so far, we heard the clip of the game last night, Texas Tech. You got Duke through. How was that in terms of a sweat last night? I saw the final, very high-scoring game, but we still overall have a tournament where the favorites are mostly getting home.
Oh, man, you're going to easily have 4 number ones in the Final Four, and as much fun as was poked at Jay Billis coming into the tournament because he picked 1-1-1-1 in his Final Four, I assure you Duke's going to have every chance to make it. Auburn should make it. Houston probably makes it bottom right, and Florida needs one more win. So it's a year of chalk, and it's so funny you bring up the favorite, Duke. I got an email the other day. You know, we get our game plans for Fox when we write. We get them like Monday or Tuesday. And one of the editors said, hey, we'd love to do a story on upsets because upsets always click. And I laughed and said, we better have a backup plan because there might not be any in the Sweet 16. And lo and behold, every favorite wins last night. Doesn't cover. You know, Duke didn't cover. Texas Tech didn't cover, but no upsets. And you've got 4 games tonight. I think we get 1. Maybe we get 2. But this is not the tournament of upsets. So now I think I have to pivot my story from here's this large upset to this is the upsetless tournament. I mean, the only one that really was exciting, I guess you can call McNeese over Clemson exciting, whatever, but Arkansas beating St. John's last weekend was the big one. Like, that's probably the upset of the tournament so far. But break over Missouri didn't really move my meter, and McNeese didn't either, especially when they kept parading the mascot with the boombox run. I had enough of him after one game. I just did. The kid with all the NIL deals. It's crazy. He's like a 300,000 right now, and he doesn't do anything. But I digress. There have not been a lot of memorable upsets, and I think that's what we want as college basketball fans, and we're just not getting it this year.
You want a few. You don't want only upsets, but you want a few. And McNeese, by the way, I mean, the games weren't even interesting. They were up 18 at halftime against Clemson, and they held on. I mean, I guess it was interesting that it got close. But what, a 3 at the buzzer to make it 2? It wasn't even back and forth. I think I haven't watched it all. For me, the best game of the tournament, I thought it was riveting, was Florida-UConn.
That was a really good one, and you thought UConn had every crack to get in there and pull the upset, but Florida's resilience was just too much. And, that game ends 77-75. It goes over at the buzzer, so Florida was up 77-72. Total was 150. UConn comes across the line, hits a 3, meaningless to some, everything for others. To go over 150, it lands 77-75, which is 152. That was a good one. I thought the game I watched on the plane was really good on Sunday night, which ironically enough was the only buzzer beater in the first round. That was Maryland over Colorado State. That was a good one too down the stretch.
Yeah, second round, yeah, or first week. How about Houston-Gonzaga? You would have wanted Gonzaga, and that was a tough one.
Yeah, we bet them plus 5.5. Got lucky. They lost by 5. I had Zaga going far. I had him in the Final Four. I thought that was sort of the bracket of chaos, but it doesn't look like we're going to have any brackets of chaos in this entire thing, which is just the way it is. That was fine. I thought Gonzaga, had some opportunities there to make it more compelling and maybe more likely to pull an upset. The other game that was fun in terms of a comeback was Wisconsin-BYU. Wisconsin's down 10 2 minutes ago and loses by 2. They had the ball with a chance to either tie or take the lead. It's been an okay tournament, but I will say, for all the people complaining about it, you have really good basketball lined up for tonight, and tomorrow's games are insane, man. Duke-Bama is going to be a good one. Florida-Texas Tech. The thing about no upsets is that you get all the good teams far. And, I mean, there are several games tonight that I can't wait to watch, including this Ole Miss and Michigan State game. That's probably the most money I have in this round. I have Ole Miss plus 3.5. I think they could win if they make their threes. It's sort of offense and defense. Ole Miss has the offense. Sparty has a really good defense. But as we've learned, not only this year but the last few years, elite offense beats elite defense in college. If you can shoot and you can score, you're gonna go farther more times than not. So I like Ole Miss tonight, but, Kentucky-Tennessee is going to be fun. That's the third time they've played. Kentucky won the first 2 meetings. Maybe Michigan can keep it close against Auburn. And then you got Houston-Purdue, and what I think is going to be a rock fight. I bet the under in that one, 132.5 or 133.5. So we'll see what happens. But, I mean, ideally, with no upsets, you have better games in the Sweet 16, the Elite 8, and the Final Four.
Yeah, that's right. It's just bottom line for me, being maybe definitely on the casual side in this tournament, is I need, because of the tradition of it all, I need that hook, right? Like I can tell that it's great play, but to me, like, they're kind of all the same elite program that has scooped up, by the way, in the last couple of years with the new changes, some of the top players in the mid-major level. And I guess, Sam, the question maybe everybody is asking themselves is this going to be how it is now, like permanently, where the top teams are just going to be too deep and they're going to suck that talent from the middle, like I said? And, I mean, is this going to be how it is now pretty much every year?
It could be. I never like to use the word permanent, but if you look at a team like Florida, they have a team full of transfers from other schools. I mean, yeah, they recruited some of those guys, but a lot of those players for the Gators went to other schools at the beginning. And same thing with Alabama. Not so much with Duke. They have most of their own guys. But Michigan's best player, I think, is Danny Wolf, who was a star on Yale last year. Yale won in the first round, pulled an upset, and then Michigan goes, hey, we want you, Danny Wolf. So he goes to Michigan. I think it's never going to be a case again where the mid-majors are going to get stronger from year to year. It's going to be more cutthroat than ever to keep your Ohio's afloat or your Akrons or, your Western Michigan, whatever. Like, it's never going to be more difficult to sustain that growth from year to year to year with the same guys you bring in, because any player at the mid-major level with a pulse is going to get poached by a major program. That's the landscape, and that's the NCAA's fault.
Did I see, by the way, that maybe on like the smaller D1 programs, smaller still than even maybe the MAC, are going to go to D3?
Oh, I didn't see anything about that. So wait, they're gonna like relegate themselves?
Yeah, I should know more about it before asking. I think
so should I. So should I, though.
I think maybe that's happened in a couple of cases. Maybe does it make sense? Like it's just a losing game at the D1 level now, and I don't know. We'll figure out.
The problem is if you go down to D3, you're going to miss out on all the money of being a D1 school and playing in a college football bowl game or March Madness. That's where you get a lot of the money when you make these postseason tournaments. So I'd have to do more digging on that. Let me flip this to something that I know some people in your audience are excited about. You know, I don't think we talked about Duke enough over the last month. Only one more win, Mike, to the Final Four.
Yes.
And, you know, as good as Bama was last night, did you see what they opened in Vegas, Duke and Bama, the number?
6?
Yeah, 6.5. And it got bet to 7 this morning. So I don't know that Bama's going to make 25 threes again. Duke's defense is much better than BYU's, and for those that listen to this show and have listened for a while, whether you have them to win the whole thing or make the Final Four, which I believe we talked about at -130.
Yes.
Duke is -300 on the money line against Bama. So we did our jobs. They have to do theirs now.
And you could easily hedge that. You know, you'll have...
We could middle it. We could take... So if anybody driving around Buffalo right now has Duke to make the Final Four, you could take Alabama +7, and if it lands 1 through 6, you win it all.
Right? Just bet the money line. What I did with that is parlay Auburn to make the Sweet 16, but then also Gonzaga and Colorado State, and I lost that by a combined 3 points. So that would have been...
Man.
That was like 20 to win 1,000. But, you know, that's why it's hard to win. Bets like that. Sam Panayotovich on the West Shore Hotline. One more college basketball thing, Sam. I see a lot from you guys, this 1st to 15 business. Is that all the rage, 1st to 15 points?
Yeah, because you get it out of the way early. And people love a lot of these dogs, but they love them for 5 minutes, not for 40. So what this market is, and a lot of these books do it, MGM does it. Let's take Duke and Alabama tomorrow, for example. I believe Duke to be the 1st to 15 points is -200, and Bama's +170. So whoever cracks 15 either gets to 15 or higher first. That's the bet. And a lot of public people like to play the dog. So they'll take Bama 1st to 15. They'll bet 10 to win 17 or 100 to win $1.70, and they will more often than not lose because the favorite usually gets there first. But it's a nice way to bet a dog early at a plus price, and you know your result within 5 or 6 minutes.
if you're that type, if you're so inclined. What was the game I was watching you guys do live? Bana and somebody. It was a conference game, St. Bonaventure, and just you were doing play-by-play.
That's right. St. Bonaventure against maybe George Mason, some obscure Atlantic 10 team. That was when we had the conference games on during our show. So, yeah, was – or maybe it was VCU.
That sounds right.
St. Bonaventure. Yeah, so our producer just bets all the dogs. And he takes them +150, +180, 2 to 1. And then when we try and throw a team at him +130, he says, no, I need more. I need a bigger price. And then, of course, those are the ones that usually win because they're closer to the middle. But it's a fun market. As I've always told you, the more bets you have for people, the more likely they are to bet.
And then he said, this is March, to cap the thrill ride that was. It was really funny. Sam, let's talk some NFL. So this week we got win totals. And this was your number. You asked Bulldog and me a week or two ago, would you bet the over on the Bills at 11.5? I think that's what your number was. And I said no. And I said I don't know that I would bet anybody at over that number, but that's probably short-sighted. That is the number they got. Bills, Ravens, Chiefs, Eagles, all coming in at 11.5. Anything about that surprising?
No, I don't love the juice on the Bills. So it's one thing to put up a number 11.5, but what's my price? The standard bet's minus 110 each way. But this book that will not be named, and I don't think these numbers are all that great for the most part, and we will get to the middle when we get all the books to open these. I don't love over minus 150. I hate that. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to make a season-long bet, especially right now at the end of March, that I have to wait until January for, I'm not laying $1.50 to win 100. So let's let MGM come up. Let's let the Vegas books open up and see what they get to. That according to that book, Buffalo's the best team in football, at least in the regular season, because they have the highest number and the highest juice on the over, minus 150. You did nail the 4 teams: Ravens, Bills, Chiefs, and Eagles. They also, this book opened the Niners 11.5, and I thought, no shot.
Yep.
And that thing is already down a full win to 10.5.
Yeah, that surprised me too. And a couple others did as well, including Vegas, with Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, Geno Smith, a high draft pick, maybe Genty. And were they 5.5, Sam? Do you know? I mean, it was lower than I expected.
I think they opened 5.5. Bulldog asked me, and I said 6.5. You do play the extra game this year, and a lot of times late in the season, half these teams don't care, or the other handful of teams have playoff berths already cinched up. So you can get those late season wins. They did move them to 6.5 on Vegas, and then the biggest mover, they put 3.5 on the Giants, which is insanely low, and that's already up to 5.5. I know the Giants suck, but to open 3.5 and have it move 2 whole wins in 3 days is not good bookmaking.
Yeah, I mean that's a crazy number. I mean the Hugh Jackson Browns lived in that kind of neighborhood, 3.5 or maybe even lower. Would you happen to remember the year after they went winless? I remember talking about the Browns, thinking you have to go over whatever the number is, and then that might have been the year they went winless. Actually,
I remember some totals around 3.5, but it's hard to open much lower because you don't write any money on the over, right, or on the under rather. You're trying to not balance the book, but you're trying to get good play on both sides. And if you open a total 3, you're not going to write much under. Like even sharp guys aren't going to bet you under 3. So that's sort of one-way action, and you never really want that. I thought the team that you were going to bring up was your Dolphins, 8.5.
My Dolphins.
Well, you said you like the Dolphins relative to the other teams in the division, right? Like the Patriots and the Jets.
I mean, a little. I think I was putting it this way earlier this week with Miami. They're a team where it's hard for me to imagine they have a season very different from what they've had these last few years with so many of the same people, same coach and principal players. I mean, they've kind of established what they are. Good starts, but they don't beat good teams, and it's just sort of in the middle. And I have a very hard time imagining them clearing that number with ease or maybe being terrible. So I guess I'd get closer to bad than they'd be great.
Well, every win total is predicated on the teams inside the division. And the good thing for Buffalo, I mean, the Buffalo Bills have a stranglehold like the Patriots had for many years. This division after Buffalo is horrible. Jets 5.5, Patriots 7.5, Dolphins 8.5. That explains a lot of the Bills 11.5 stuff, does it not?
Sure, right. You want 5 or 6 wins out of that. And even the Bills have a really interesting schedule outside of the division. How about this, Sam? If you didn't know, this is the last year of the stadium here, and they get Chiefs, Eagles, Ravens, Bengals all at home this year. I would expect 3 at least of those games to be 4:25 or primetime games. And it's New Orleans and Tampa as well to fill out the home schedule. But they will be in your face this year with those games.
That's fine. I love watching that quarterback play. He is one of my favorite guys to watch every Sunday, or if they play on Monday or Thursday or whatever.
You'll take it.
And this is a team, buddy. People bet them every year to win the Super Bowl, and there's only one team right now that has a shorter price at most books, and that's Philly. So they are Super Bowl good. They just have to get there.
Sunday or Monday or Thursday or Friday or Wednesday or Netflix or Prime or whatever else. One more, Sam. We're still, I think, about 3 weeks away from the NHL playoffs. I don't know if you have thought about that yet. I'm guessing, as avid a player as you are, maybe you have, but I don't know. It's still not time yet. I was going to tell you what I'm going to do.
Okay.
I'm going to bet against Washington, and if necessary, just martingale it all the way to the end.
Oh, wow. It's so funny you say that because I bet the Capitals a month ago to win the whole thing. So this is very good content. You don't like them, huh?
No. To me, and I've had good success with this over the years, the markets are more sophisticated, and they've picked up on sort of the teams that have great seasons but aren't actually that good. They've got the shooting percentage piece. They've got the save percentage piece, maybe special teams, stuff that is less – maybe this has changed a little, but the way I have always thought of it, less reliable in a short series. So I'll bet anybody against them.
Okay. I will. Let's get to the middle on a bet, though. USA versus Canada, nation to win the cup. It's got to be USA, right? Has to be.
It's been that for 30 years in a row.
It's only minus 300, Mike. We could parlay USA minus 300 with Bills to win the AFC, and I think we're in a good place.
And Alabama.
Alabama.
First of 15. No, who are we talking about? Toronto, of course. Winnipeg.
Edmonton. One.
All right, yeah. I don't love any of those teams, really. Winnipeg has had a great season. But martingale, so when you lose, you just sort of double back and go after them again, and that can be really bad. I'm not saying that's necessarily a good approach to betting, but it could be 4 losses. I think I'll take my chances with that. All right, Sam.
1-800-GAMBLER. 1-800-GAMBLER, right?
Yes, right. Very good. Thanks for your time, as always.
All right, see you, bud.
Sam Panayotovich on the West Her Hotline. He and Joe Ostrowski host Bet Sweats together weekday mornings. Insider calls presented by BetMGM. For all of your betting needs, check out the newly rebranded BetMGM network on the Odyssey app. I mean, these can lose, but it goes back around a decade. A couple of teams that I just did not like at all because they had sort of the flukier PDO they have in hockey, sort of the flukier stats. And generally that worked out. I'm trying to think of examples. I can think of examples. It's sort of ironic to me because when you bet, I think you more easily remember your losses. But I remember a Devils team that I got at good odds that went to the finals. The Rangers one year. It's too long ago to even care about. But Washington is kind of the sentimental choice right now because of Ovechkin in that record that won't matter in the playoffs, but they've had a great season. He's had an amazing year to make it close, make it realistic as we get near the end that he can break the Gretzky record this year, which before the season, mostly what I heard was, well, he's going to need 40-some goals, and he's like right there. Did not score last night. So he's got 5 to tie still, Ovechkin, and then 6 to pass him. And what is it? They have 10 games left. I think it might be less than that. I want to check real quick. They play the Sabres on Sunday. 47-16-9, so 10 games left. Yeah. The Sabres have back-to-back weekend afternoon road games for the second week in a row. Last Saturday and Sunday, Minnesota and Winnipeg, and now we've got Philadelphia tomorrow and Washington on Sunday for the Sabres, who are digging out a little bit if it's not too late. Chad DeDominicis will join us on them at 5 today. Sigmund Bloom coming up after the update. Talk about the Bills' offense and a lot of rookies. That's what we're trying to figure out right now is the rookie running backs, receivers, and the quarterbacks too. Travis Hunter, a lot of interesting topics in that area to get into with Sigmund, who's always a great guy to have a conversation with. So that's coming up. This is Mike Schopp on WGR.
There he is.
When saying hello to the bullpen now. So hi, bullpen.
Yes, Sal, welcome to the bullpen.
I love that you guys nicknamed it the bullpen. We got a lot of people. I do watch the show on YouTube.
Yeah?
And I watch the afternoon show on YouTube.
Me too.
It's so great to watch.
the afternoon show on YouTube.
And sometimes I'll just keep the audio on because you can do that in the background. But I love watching it. I see a lot of you in the bullpen. Thank you very much. We got the sports man who comes in all the time. AC Man 319 who's there.
He's a regular.
Coach Chris Curtis. I know it says Coach Drunk Chris Curtis. I hope you're not a drunk coach. That's all I want to tell you. DJ is in there, Kevin. So thank you. And I do see you, and you guys say hello, and I'm trying to do the job, but I appreciate it. But today's the first day. So if you have never gone to the YouTube stream, check us out at WGR 550 on YouTube. And I've been saying this for a while, Joe. Canadian listeners, this is finally a way for them to watch or listen to the show.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't do it on the app, which has been shut down in Canada for years.
Yeah.
And now we finally get our Canadian listeners back. They can watch and listen through YouTube.
Yeah, super cool. So yeah, be sure to check it out. We'll check in on the chat in a little bit. They were talking
The Buffalo Sabres are on a 3-game win streak. No game tonight as they prepare for a back-to-back on the road this weekend. They will take on Philadelphia first tomorrow at 1 p.m. Jason Zucker, after missing yesterday due to a family matter, was back on the ice today. Josh Down sent back down to Rochester. And the Sabres also announced that goaltender Tobias Lehtonen has signed his 3-year entry-level contract, which will begin in the 2025-26 season. Around the rest of the NHL, just 6 games tonight. Some of the notables: Carolina has Montreal in town, and Vancouver's in Columbus to take on the Blue Jackets. Both those games are at 7. 8:30 see Chicago host Las Vegas, and then at 10 the Rangers are in California to take on the Anaheim Ducks. To college football, Colorado is giving head coach Deion Sanders a 5-year, $54 million contract. Sanders overall just 13-12 in his 2 seasons at Colorado, but improved to 9-4 last year, saw Travis Hunter win the Heisman Trophy, and in the year prior to Sanders joining the program, the team won just 1 game. Mets and Blue Jays are in action today. Toronto hosts Baltimore. First pitch just after 7. Mets are down in Houston versus the Astros. Start time for that game just after 8 o'clock. And it is also opening day for the Bisons. They are at home against Rochester, and currently Buffalo is up 3-2 in the 6th. You can listen to the rest of that game over on our sister station, the Bet 1520. And then coming up tonight right here on WGR, the second half of the Sweet 16 matchups in the NCAA men's tournament at 7. Ole Miss versus Michigan State will get the night going. 7:30, Kentucky versus Tennessee. 9:30, Auburn takes on Michigan. And then the night will finish up with Houston versus Purdue somewhere around after 10 o'clock. And coverage of the NCAA championship tournament both today and this weekend on WGR and the Bet 1520 is brought to you by Window Nation. For all your window needs, visit windownation.com. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Hard salami's okay, but it's not as good, right? Although maybe if you're French vanilla, you'd be like hard salami.
You mean the best vanilla?
The fake vanilla.
The delicious
the
vanilla?
Fake vanilla.
The creamy vanilla without sand and dirt in it?
It's Mike Schopp.
I like that
Sand
one.
and dirt. The beans.
Yeah.
The specks.
Yes.
Are the problem.
It's granular.
The actual what
They're-
vanilla is the absolute worst take you've ever had. Because it's on different levels of offensiveness.
I have a lot of questions. Number 1, how dare you?
And the Bulldog.
Maybe when you first made the ice cream, they were interested in making it, I don't know, good, and added cream to it to make it creamy, thus ice cream, not ice sand, ice gravel.
People, what do we even do?
I mean, what are we talking about?
Help.
Police! Help! Police! Help!
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
So I have a notebook. Aren't you happy for me? So I have a notebook that I use every day in here, and just usually it's when something harder to do when you're working alone, but something just comes to mind and I write it down, but it's going to be like half a thought. And I got to the end of this notebook, and whenever this started, now I just sort of use the back pages. So I'm working about halfway through back to front. So I'm, looking at notebook. It's open. My left side here is mostly blank today. It's a new page. My right side has notes from whenever ago, and the first name on it is Sigmund Bloom. And I think based on what this looks like, maybe Sigmund, we talked like last year right at this time or right before the draft, because I may have asked you about Cook and like when the Bills should draft a running back, if they should at all. And I think you might have said like round 3, which was pretty close to what they actually did. So good job if that's right.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of that this year. I think that, for fantasy football, we need to keep our head on a swivel because a lot of backfields are about to get blown up. Probably not Buffalo, but I'm not going to say 100%.
Yeah, we could be into some rough waters with Cook and money, but that's not known, and it's still pretty early. The draft might tell us something if that is what the Bills think is the case. Sigmund Bloom, footballguys.com. Let me give him a proper introduction here. Been good enough to join us often over the years. And again, sometimes about the draft. Is the draft, I'm just going to ask, is the draft maybe your favorite time of year? I mean, this is really fun, and you know the prospects so well, and your site so thoroughly covers all of this. I bet you love it.
Yeah, I do. And, Mike, why I love it is that from the intellectual stimulation angle, every football conversation intersects with the draft. every idea about what makes players good, fit in systems, how teams win, how organizations handle the cap, how organizations manage their rosters, what matters in terms of intangibles, the human qualities of a player. Every conversation intersects at the draft, and especially that teams tell us the truth with their picks. They can't lie. They tell us what they think matters. And as you implied, what they think about the players on their roster and the direction the team is going.
Yeah, really good points. Well, running back, back to that, it's a great year. Everybody seems to agree for running backs. And, that includes depth where you could have, would you agree with this? Are we looking at a draft segment where running backs picked on Saturday, the third day, even like toward the end of the draft, are live for, important roles?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's such a glut of potential contributors that your fourth-round backs are going to be the quality of typical second, third-round backs. Your sixth, seventh-round backs are going to be the quality of typical fourth, fifth-round backs. And your undrafted backs are going to be the kind of backs that usually get drafted. And I think what that means is teams where you might look at their backfield, look at their depth chart, look at the contracts and say it doesn't make sense for them to draft a running back. Well, they're going to find somebody they like enough in this draft that they feel like they can't pass on him at a discounted price. So there's going to be a lot of chaos, and I think that for fantasy football, that makes it fun.
Yeah, it makes it interesting and hard, but also fun. I'm waiting for, just in a general sense, Sigmund, like last year we had a year where veterans got paid, and it was kind of surprising, mostly. Barkley in there, Derrick Henry in Baltimore, Swift to Chicago. Not all of them went great. Jacobs, Mixon, new teams. And for the most part, these guys hit, and they stayed on the field, which for me was a headache. Even if the running back, class in the draft wasn't great, still, like you're sort of expecting injuries and the age cliff, as they say, and really that didn't happen. So a guy who plays it like I do got beat. Just didn't have enough Derrick Henry, didn't have enough Barkley. I want to stay on that square, though, Sigmund, this year. And this point about the running back depth, I think, helps me to want to do that. I still feel like it's the right bet to make, that those guys will get old and get hurt, and now they're a year older.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that we often find that in fantasy football, we're always a year behind. So we're reacting to what happened last year instead of forecasting what's going to happen this year, the classic Wayne Gretzky skate to where the puck's going to be. So I think that's always a smart bet, if only because you're going to take advantage of inefficiencies, because now everybody is adjusting to a world where guys like James Conner and Aaron Jones retain value, whereas we've seen historically it's better to be a year early on the old running backs dropping off of a cliff. So where picks like Trey Benson, Blake Corum, those picks didn't work out last year. This year, maybe it's better to be on Trey Benson, to be on a Jordan Mason in Minnesota, and bet on those running backs not making it to the end of the year that are on the back nine of their career.
That is hard. It's right. You have teams where maybe the draft capital wasn't quite as strong as like Benson and Corum, who you mentioned. Like take Marshawn Lloyd in Green Bay, who really just didn't get off the ground last year. I wonder if I can still make that bet on him with all these points being made about the veterans, which in this case is Jacobs.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of running backs that, and not just the veterans, Mike. I think we're going to see what the Packers think about Marshawn Lloyd, or maybe what a team like Miami thinks about Jalen Wright. With some of these picks, we're going to see how confident these teams are with the youth in their backfield. And I do think that's why we have to be prepared for almost every running back's value is vulnerable right now because of the depth of contributors, not necessarily guys that are going to take over backfields, but guys that are going to add something, especially backs that can play a specific role, a passing down role, a role maybe where they can add speed and return ability, especially if this change goes through to make touchbacks at the 35-yard line instead of the 30-yard line and gets more kickoffs in play, or the pounders, the bruisers. We have a lot of those in this class, and that's going to shake up some backfields that we feel are somewhat stable right now.
Really good. Yeah, I'm thinking that to your point there and from prior, like the second or third round draft picks from last year probably should get a chance still. Past that, the Saturday guys with the difference in talent last year to this year, that's pretty disposable. Davis in Buffalo even, I don't think he's quite, at risk. But if a team drafts, if Green Bay, to that example, drafts a running back in round 5, maybe I'd put him in over Lloyd,
Right, well, especially with the idea that we should translate that if a team drafts a running back in the 5th round, they probably had a 3rd round grade on that running back. So we might be underestimating how much they think of it back, and especially if a team doesn't have a need at running back. So, this is a player that they feel like we can't get through this draft without taking this player because we like him that much. An example that comes to mind, of course, was the biggest hit last year, Bucky Irving, and we saw Liam Cohen say, hey, Bucky Irving runs the ball the way I want running backs to run the ball in my offense. Now Liam Cohen is in Jacksonville. You might like Tank Bigsby. You might think Travis Etienne with a new coach is going to get a shot. But if Liam Cohen's Jags take a running back in the 4th or 5th round, that's going to be the guy I put my chip on. Interesting.
Sigmund Bloom, footballguys.com. On running backs for one or two more before we get to some Bill stuff and other draft things while we have time. Genty to the Raiders. I think you've liked that the whole time. 6.
Yeah, because the signature player of the Pete Carroll era in Seattle was Marshawn Lynch. And I think that Genty's the kind of player who can be a signature player for the Raiders. And I think that from a fantasy football perspective, we want the team that takes him to make him the point of the spear of the offense. And that would signal that if he goes at number 6, I think it would be a beautiful marriage. And I think for Raiders fans that have been in the desert now for about 20 years in terms of head coaches, this is the most exciting hire they've had. And I think it would be a sign that Pete Carroll's going to put his stamp on this team right away.
Makes sense. How about Omarion Hampton? Is he a first-round pick for you?
Not for me. Now, I'm not saying he's not going to be a first-round pick, but I think that he blends in more with guys like Quinton Judkins, even someone like Damian Martinez, who's probably going to last until the 3rd day. I don't see him as standing out from that 2nd and 3rd tier. I think the gap, honestly, from Genty to every other back in this class is larger than the gap of whoever your number 2 back is down to about number 20. That's how strong the depth is, but that's also how rare of a prospect Genty is.
Interesting. Okay. Let's talk Bills here, Sig. So we've got Cook, who we mentioned already, 18 regular season touchdowns last year. The draft market doesn't seem too impressed. He goes around running back 14, and I think most people would not predict any sort of holdout or anything like that. I mean, it's costly. He does have a contract for this year as it is. He would be, I mean, we've just seen it, somebody, if he gives you even close to that season at that price, you're going to be very happy.
Yeah, what I like to do, Mike, going into my draft prep, is I will look at players' ADP last year and then look at it this year and say, is the market being rational? As the new information we have about this player, this team, this situation, has it been factored in correctly? And James Cook has only really moved up about 10 picks, even though there was a lot more uncertainty about him last year, about his role, about his effectiveness. He did as well as you could have asked him to do in terms of explosive plays and maximizing what he got as far as his share of this offense. And I don't see any reason that would change this year, either the quality of the offense or the quality of his contribution. So absolutely, I think he's a screaming value right now. And honestly, assuming they don't sign him to an extension, and I don't think they will, that might be even more reason to be in on him, because that's how he's going to get that second contract that he wants, is by staying at that level of play.
So last year for me with Cook, I kind of got away with it because I never have really loved the player. And with Allen vulturing all the touchdowns, his not having a rushing touchdown history, I thought there were negatives. But what I did like about him is that the Bills, once they changed coordinators in 2023, went run heavy. Right. And they won every week until they lost in the playoffs by 3. So I feel like their takeaway from that would be, that worked. And they definitely did more of that. Ironic that Allen could win an MVP in a year where, average depth of target was career low, and they really were not effective getting the ball downfield, couldn't separate. And, here's Cook, 16 rushing touchdowns, tying OJ. I kind of got away with it with him.
Yeah, well, I think that what we underestimated was that maybe the overall production of this offense wasn't going to skyrocket, but the job of Josh Allen became a lot easier. He didn't have to make as many Superman plays. He didn't have to take as much on his shoulders. And some of that is what you said, the committing to the run, to having guys that play big boy football in the trenches and having that mentality. And I think James Cook showed us that. I know when they drafted him, we didn't see him as a running back that would be setting the tone in the running game, but he did that last year for them. And that's why so many rushing touchdowns were available for him. As you said, we saw the priority of Joe Brady on establishing the run, and that's how you were able to get away with it.
Right. 6 linemen on the field a lot to that end. Sigmund Bloom, my guest on the Wester Hotline. I'm Mike Schopp. Bulldog is off today. So the passing offense in 2025 now, Sigmund, they've added Josh Palmer. Mac Hollins leaves. Amari Cooper is probably not coming back. He just hasn't, to my knowledge, signed anywhere else yet. You have Kincaid here. On Kincaid, I'm a little worried because when the season ended, the thing they said about him was they want him to get stronger. Now, that can mean just sort of like in the background, holding up over the course of a season, but it also could be, playing a more physical role, which was not what we were led to believe when they drafted him. So I don't know if that upside is really going to show.
No, it's the everybody eats offense, right? And I think while it's great for Josh Allen, while it's great for the team, while it's a great blueprint for winning football, for fantasy football, it's more unpredictable, and it means there's not really an alpha target. It's going to be based on matchups. I think adding Josh Palmer only complicates things because he's going to be the best outside receiver they've had to beat man coverage as a downfield boundary receiver. I think it was a great fit in giving them something that they were lacking. So he's going to have his weeks depending on the matchups. Maybe not against the Patriots. Maybe against the Patriots, it's going to be more of a Khalil Shakir week or Dalton Kincaid week in the middle of the field. But as far as Kincaid being that kind of player like Brock Bowers or Trey McBride that is the alpha target earner from the tight end position, even though the draft capital indicated that, like you said, the Bills are basically telling us that's not going to happen.
Sigmund is the first person I ever heard talk up Shakir. I'm not sure if it was even before that draft. It might have been, but after the Bills got him, I think it was. And then we talked to you again after the Bills drafted him in the 5th round, and you were high on him. I mean, what a consistent player he's been for them. Not really the ceiling that you want from a starting receiver in fantasy football. Didn't get the touchdowns. They gave him big money, pretty big money here. I feel like what they would want from him is more of the same. Or would you think there could be like a more, growth for him, red zone, whatever that might be?
I don't think there'll be growth for him, if only because the Bills don't need him to grow to win. I think if the Bills had more defensive deficiencies, or they were an offense that relied more on Josh Allen, you could see him have more of an Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of role in a high-scoring game where he would get 12 targets or 13 targets, 9 or 10 catches. But they don't need him to do that. There are some situations, high-leverage third-down situations, where you can see that is the player that has the trust from Josh Allen. They just aren't putting themselves in the position where they have to convert a lot of plays like that to win. So what's great for the Bills, what's great for the fans of the Bills and the team means that the game scripts just aren't asking Josh Allen to throw the ball 40 times and to have to move the ball through the air to keep up with a deficient defense or a running game that just can't slow the game down and win the trenches. So, good things for the Bills aren't translating necessarily to good things for fantasy football.
Yeah. No small thing. Minnesota is a team last year where their defense has been terrible, so they're really going to light it up. I mean, they did well enough with that passing offense, but their defense got better. They won every week, and sometimes, like you just said, you really don't need to, sling it like you would if you were, struggling to stop anybody. Are you a Josh Palmer guy?
I think that he's an underrated player. I think that we saw, even going back to his time at Tennessee, that he was showing that he could hang outside on an island with NFL quality cornerbacks. And there may be, again, a few times a season where the matchups will dictate that Palmer is going to be able to win outside, and they are going to be able to do more. You know, when you think of Gabe Davis, you think of Gabe Davis winning those contested catches. You think of him winning on the boundary with his athleticism. But Josh Palmer can win on the boundary with route running and can create some separation and create some big plays. So I do think that it shows a really good self-scouting by the Bills to say, what are we missing? And I think that when you look at the contract that Gabe Davis got from Jacksonville and you add in the inflation of the cap, they got him in a bargain.
Yeah, good. That's logical. Do you have a Coleman takeaway from his rookie year?
I think that there were flashes of what they were looking for, and there were moments that they asked him to do things maybe he wasn't ready to do yet, and that's okay. I still think that even though he has that draft capital, again, that you might think he's an alpha or a player that they're going to design their pass offense around, that's just not the blueprint for this offense. So I think you are seeing his contested catch ability. Maybe you may see him play a role in the red zone, but they don't want one player to have to carry the passing game. I don't think that's any deficiency on his part. I just think it's a really smart design so that Josh Allen isn't putting too much pressure on himself, because that's when he makes mistakes.
Just a couple of minutes here, Sigmund. Let's get back to the draft before you go. It sounds like everybody sort of has gotten to Cam Ward to Tennessee at 1. If you disagree, I'm sure you'll tell me. But then after that, it's really interesting, isn't it, with two elite-sounding non-quarterback prospects in Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, and then two teams that could easily justify picking a quarterback. Even the Giants, I would say that still, with the two signings they've made, the two veterans. I mean, those guys are going to be there for long. What do you see happening?
Yeah, I think this is really hard to project because both Kevin Stefanski and Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen in New York might feel like they're 2 or 3 steps out on the plank, and maybe drafting Shedeur Sanders at number 2 or number 3 could buy them more time or reset the clock. I'm not saying it would, but that could be skewing their logic. Whereas you say, Abdul Carter out of Penn State is an elite edge rusher. Certainly would make sense for the Browns to pair him up with Myles Garrett now that they've kept him and signed him to an extension. And then Travis Hunter, I would think if Cam Ward hadn't improved as much as he did last year, I don't know why Travis Hunter wouldn't be the number 1 pick in this draft or in a lot of drafts, because we haven't seen a player like him before, and we may not see a player like him again. So, if the Patriots, I think for Bills fans, you want the Giants to take him so you don't have to play him twice a year, or if the Patriots can improve maybe even 3 times some years, because he's a very rare player, and I'll applaud the team that takes him over a quarterback. Or if the Patriots have him fall into their lap, then maybe that's a sign that things are going to start breaking their way.
Yeah, he's like 2 guys, 2 elite players in one in Hunter. Finally, on Shedeur Sanders, Sigmund, so if he doesn't get picked in that range, people say, like, you could see him fall a ways. Do you think that would be justified? What would you predict happens with him?
Yeah, I think it would be justified. I would say that quarterbacks I would compare him to Geno Smith, Teddy Bridgewater, Andy Dalton. Not exactly bad picks, but not franchise changers. The kinds of quarterbacks you win with, not win because. Now, perhaps there's an offensive coordinator that could really capitalize on how aggressive he is as a passer, how hyper accurate he can be in the short and intermediate passing game. But that's not the kind of quarterback that you stake your job on or stake your reputation on or pound the table in the war room. So I definitely think we could see him slide. And at that point, do the Browns trade back into the first? Do the Giants trade back into the first? Does Jackson Dart even maybe go ahead of him? Because Dart, out of all this, he offers maybe more in terms of raw tools, in terms of downfield passing. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty, which, of course, is just how the NFL likes it as a television event.
No doubt, and we will eat it up. Sigmund, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time today and always.
Always look forward to it, Mike. Thanks.
Thank you. Sigmund Bloom, footballguys.com. Interesting grouping of names he mentioned there. Geno Smith, Teddy Bridgewater, Andy Dalton. I'm thinking, like, as he's naming them, I'm like, okay, Geno Smith, early second, Bridgewater, maybe the last pick of the first round. Andy Dalton, maybe the first pick of the second round. So we're kind of all drafted in the same area. And aren't they all guys who have made the playoffs but never won? I know that's true of Geno had the one with Seattle where they lost to San Francisco. Bridgewater had, I think, that game against Seattle when he was Minnesota's quarterback. And Dalton is kind of famously, remember the Bengals going every year but losing. I think they're all very, not just in style, maybe, which is more of what Sigmund was saying, like just overall ability, but they've also had, in a way, kind of similar careers. And they're all still in the league. And Bridgewater went back. I don't know if he's signed anywhere right now, but he went to coach high school and then went back, to Detroit last year as a backup. Geno with the Raiders now, and Dalton was retained by Carolina. Okay, draft thoughts, Sabres. Yesterday we did baseball. Anything on your mind you think would be interesting, come at me with it. 803-0550 is the number. On hockey at 5, Chad DeDominicis. The Sabres play tomorrow afternoon in Philadelphia. Paul is traveling today, so he is unavailable. Thanks for listening. This is Mike Schopp here on a Friday. This is WGR.
News: Jason Zucker, after missing yesterday due to a family matter, was back on the ice, and the Sabres also announced that goaltender Tobias Lehtonen has signed his 3-year entry-level contract, which will begin in the 2025-26 season. In college football, Colorado is giving head coach Deion Sanders a 5-year, $54 million contract. Sanders is just 13-12 in his 2 years at Colorado, but improved to 9-4 last year. It also saw Travis Hunter win the Heisman Trophy, and in the year following Sanders' arrival, the team did just win one game. Bison's opening day is today as they are at home against Rochester. Good news for the Bisons. They're up 5-2 in the 8th. You can hear the rest of that game over on our sister station, The Bet 1520. And then coming up right here on WGR at 7, the second half of the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament for the men's bracket. At 7, Ole Miss versus Michigan State will get the night started. 7:30, Kentucky versus Tennessee. 9:30, Auburn takes on Michigan. And the night will finish up around 10 p.m. start time with Houston versus Purdue. And coverage of the NCAA championship tournament for both today and this weekend on WGR and the Bet 1520 is brought to you by Window Nation. For all your window needs, visit windownation.com. That's Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
To me, Diggs and Brandon Ayuk were the two most realistic targets for the Patriots this year as far as acquiring a top-end receiver or someone who could be. They badly need that. They have the worst receiver room in the NFL, a bunch of number 3 and number 4 receivers, and it's been that way for several years now. They haven't had a 1,000-yard receiver since Julian Edelman in 2019. So they need talent. To me, they should still try to get Travis Hunter at number 4. That would be a slam dunk for them.
Ben Volin, Boston Globe, joining our morning show today. Sammy P had it in his head that I was into the Dolphins. I'm really not. I'm really not. You could have said that about me with the Jets last year, but I have a tough time imagining Miami being much different. Maybe they go south, but can they really just win 11 games as presently constituted? Plus the draft. That's a hard one for me. This is Bulldog too, and I want to say he was first to it, as opposed to me. I could kind of, not 11 games, but I could kind of see it with New England, where it's May in year 2, new coaches, first of all, and it sounded like it was amateur hour with Gerard Mayo and that staff. And now you've got Vrabel, who at least you got to give him, he's proven that he's good at it. I mean, it's the former coach of the year, been to the playoffs, so credibility. And Josh McDaniels also has, as a coordinator, I think, credibility. So they've got that. You put May in with that. Running back, I really don't care. I mean, maybe it's Ramondre Stevenson, maybe it's someone new, whatever. But wide receiver, Diggs, and if it's Hunter, like a rookie, plus, are you supposed to, this has got to be a question I think of in one of these fantasy podcasts, are you supposed to just write off the guys they drafted last year who basically did nothing? Polk and Baker. 2 receivers from that draft, they got very little out of either. And you have Keyshawn Boutte and Pop Douglas. You've got some sort of Kendrick Bourne, some replacement level other options, I think, but Jalen Polk was a second-round pick. You might not want to just sort of be done with that after 1 year, since you had those other challenges last year with May being a rookie, Brissett even before that, the coaching staff, etc. So it's always ifs with bad teams, but if maybe there's something there that this staff can tap into, he matures, whatever it is, with Diggs, Travis Hunter is a huge swing player in this. Without him, then what? They're not probably drafting a different receiver at 4. Interesting to hear Sigmund Bloom say, you really want the Giants, if you're the Bills, to take Travis Hunter. He's all that, I guess, isn't he? And, 2 players in your division for years to come, maybe that's a big deal. You go Ward at 1 to Tennessee, Carter at 2 to Cleveland. It's kind of how it sounds now. I go back and forth between whether that makes sense or it doesn't, having Myles Garrett and Abdul Carter. Sure, like just you own edge rusher, but you're not a good team at all, and maybe you'd want to think about something else. And I go back and forth on that. And then 3, I think the Giants probably would take Hunter and not Shedeur Sanders or anybody else. Maybe they could go offensive tackle. That's the position I see the most often in that range. If it's not 3, but it'd be like 4 to New England. I guess I would predict that a tackle goes in the top 4. And that only happens if Sanders doesn't. Top 5 anyway, something like that. So that I think the Patriots have the possibility of really being different quickly, because I think the quarterback might be good. And, Diggs is older and coming off a big injury, but there's probably still something there with him, especially if he doesn't have to be the alpha. Like he can play in the slot. They just need one of those guys, not that we want this, but the Patriots just need one of those guys from last year to make a big step. I don't know. Maybe it'll happen. I saw a cool thing from Pro Football Network. I'm glad to be on their email list, Pro Football Network, because they send some interesting data and analysis. What they did today was the top 100 NFL free agents for 2026. Everybody who doesn't have a contract after this year. And there are 5 Bills on this list. Now it's 100 guys. I will tell you that number 96 is Daquan Jones. I read the whole list. So somebody who is, his status on the roster is pretty tenuous, been around a long time. I don't know. Are the Bills getting ready to re-up Daquan Jones, or just what would they do? He comes in on this list, the top 100 free agents in the league for 2026. TJ Watt was number 1. And Micah Parsons from Dallas, number 2. Those are the top 2 guys that, as of now, are not signed past this year. But, again, 5 Bills. The others, number 13, Christian Benford. If he isn't signed. 13. This site, like many, are just quick to tell you how good he's been for the Bills. That's not just fans. He does seem to get a lot of respect outside Benford. So he comes in at number 13. James Cook, you might assume would be on this list, and he is. He comes in at number 24. This is hard for me to sort of like contextualize because I haven't thought for a minute who are the other free agents to be around the NFL, but I'm going in through this door to maybe give you some perspective on that. Cook comes in at 24. I'm going to skip the next bill and go to 94, who is Connor McGovern, right down next to Daquan Jones. Had a nice season for the Bills. Does he end up being here for too many more for years to come? I don't know, but he'll be up after this upcoming season. And Matt Milano, rated 67th. And I'm starting to want, not starting to, but since that restructuring that they did, the signal that sent to me was that maybe there's not a lot left. They reworked him so that he'll be up, and that's why he's on this list, after next season. He's just been through so much physically. I wonder if there isn't sort of a maybe mutual expectation here that it's late for Milano. So that's one. Sigmund Bloom made that great point about how when it comes to the draft, teams can't lie. They'll probably lie a lot before the draft, but once they make their picks, how that reveals how they really feel. That obviously is the case. They're not making picks just as a deke. So if the Bills, push linebacker up, maybe even to the point where you'd think, say it's in the second round, are they thinking that player is going to start as a rookie? That wouldn't be a great sign for Milano and his, recovery. He did come back, just sort of like where he's at in his career. I don't want to be too, pessimistic about that, but that's kind of how it's felt to me since they made that move with his contract. So top 100 2026 free agents, 5 Bills on the list, and I had to make a note, number 99 is Kyle Pitts. Like Kyle Pitts from Atlanta, the prodigy, end-all be-all tight end prospect, super young, has just like had such a disappointing career that even on the list of 100 free agents for next year, he comes in like under Daquan Jones. He comes in at 99th. That is harsh stuff. One more on football we haven't talked about. Yes, this is actually a thing. The nose wipe gesture this week. Apparently, this... do I get fined for that? I'm just trying to sort of demonstrate what I think it is. The nose wipe gesture now will constitute unsportsmanlike conduct in the NFL. I mean, we had to get this in. The week is almost up here, but a new one. Jeremy had a funny tweet about imagining Gene Steratore. Jeremy seems to have a major problem with Gene Steratore. Like a personal thing. I don't know what it is. Other than like he might be sort of the face of all the TV refs. I don't know. Anyway, he just was imagining, and I went with him on this, guys, during a game, analyzing whether the nose wipe gesture rose to the level of a foul. Good stuff. Football gives us these gems every offseason. 803-0550 for your calls. Would love to talk to you today, whether it's about the Bills, the draft. We did some Sabres earlier, and we'll do more. Also, some of the baseball topics from yesterday that were fun. Chad DeDominicis joins me at 5 to talk about the Sabres' future. This is Mike Schopp on WGR. 716-221-4WGR to talk to me. No, to win a pair of tickets to see Disturbed with Daughtry and Nothing More at KeyBank Center a week from tonight, Friday, April 4th, courtesy of Live Nation. Get your tickets while you can at Ticketmaster.com. So tonight is the first game of the UFL season, United Football League. I know about this only because on certain fantasy podcasts like Establish the Run that I'll listen to, they'll mention how they have, a package where you can, get help putting lineups in for tonight's or the weekend's United Football League games, which is, I respect it. I respect that level of dedication and expertise. Otherwise, I don't think I would even know that maybe there even is a United Football League. But there is, and I just remembered this and did a quick Twitter search, and I guess, all this is news to me. There was some speculation that the players would strike. The season opener is tonight in Houston. It's the St. Louis Battlehawks. St. Louis Battlehawks and Houston Roughnecks. And so The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, is a co-owner of the UFL. I think it's just one entity, even though there are different teams. And I'm just seeing that the Players Union drafted a letter for him that they want to deliver to him in person. I also saw that he was supposed to, as a co-owner of the UFL, be in attendance for the season opener tonight, but now will not be. So that's messy. Did you know Russ Brandon is the CEO of this league? Maybe you didn't know what happened to Russ. Russ Brandon is the CEO of the United Football League. And the executive vice president is Daryl Johnston. I'm assuming that's the Daryl Johnston from the Cowboys, from Newport, that we see every Sunday broadcasting. So they're in a little bit of a mess here. The players it was speculated that they wouldn't play, but now it's being reported that they will, even without a CBA. And this letter, I just read it, it's the players saying, we just want year-round health care or a salary increase sufficient to ensure that players can afford it on their own. And they're appealing to The Rock for this. So there it is, the UFL, from a few different angles. How you can gamble on it, then also, what's going on with the league, in whatever order you like. That's tonight. Chad DeDominicis coming up. Also, by the way, just about to start, I think, tonight, of course, the NCAA men's and women's basketball tournaments, this UFL if you want it, baseball, not a full schedule tonight. Always weird for me how many matchups take the second day off. What is that? That's the Brewers and the Yankees. Thursday, Saturday, Sunday? Okay. Maybe that's the interleague series, actually, that wouldn't play 4. That might be what that is. Also, Colorado and Tampa are playing today, but they didn't play yesterday. So you've got baseball, too, and the college hockey tournament, which is really fun to watch. That goes tonight as well. Again, speaking of hockey, Chad DeDominicis on the Sabres after the update. Happy Friday. This is Mike Schopp on WGR. For a few months, I've been talking about Paul Davis Restoration and how they put businesses back together after a fire or a flood. Spring is here. That can mean flooding. Whether it's your business or your own home, if you ever have flood damage or damage from a fire, make your first thought Paul Davis. Paul Davis delivers every day, morning or middle of the night. Go to buffalo.pauldavis.com. That's buffalo.pauldavis.com. Paul Davis Restoration, your best friend on your worst day.
Sabres do not have a game today as they prepare for a road back-to-back this weekend. They did, though, get a win last night to move their win streak to 3. Tomorrow they take on Philadelphia at 1 p.m. Some good news from practice today. Jason Zucker did return to the ice after missing yesterday due to a family matter. And then the Sabres also announced today that goaltender Tobias Lennon has signed his 3-year entry-level contract, which will begin in the 2025-26 season. Around the rest of the NHL, 6 games tonight. Some notables. Carolina has Montreal in town, and Vancouver is in Columbus to take on the Blue Jackets. Both those games are at 7. 8:30, see Chicago host Las Vegas, and then at 10, the Rangers are in California to take on the Anaheim Ducks. In college football, Colorado is giving head coach Deion Sanders a 5-year, $54 million contract. Sanders, in his 2 years at Colorado, is just 13-12, but this year did improve to 9-4 in a bowl game. Team also saw Travis Hunter win the Heisman Trophy. In Major League Baseball, Mets and Blue Jays are in action today. Toronto hosts Baltimore. First pitch just after 7 p.m. And the Mets, they are down in Texas to take on the Astros. Start time for that game just after 8 o'clock. And then for the Bisons, their opening day was today. They took on Rochester at home, and they walk away with the W. 6-2 win for them. And then coming up right here on WGR at 7, the second half of the Sweet 16 of the men's NCAA tournament at 7. The night will get underway. Ole Miss versus Michigan State. After that, 7:30, Kentucky versus Tennessee. 9:30, Auburn taking on Michigan. And then the night will wrap up somewhere around 10 o'clock start time for Houston and Purdue. And coverage of the NCAA Championship Tournament on WGR and the Bet 1520, both today and this weekend, is brought to you by Window Nation. For your window needs, visit windownation.com. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
It's Mike Schopp.
We were having a very serious conversation about mayonnaise here.
And the Bulldog.
And don't even talk to me about weed.
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
Okay, right on time. A Sabres winning streak. I'm sorry. Mike Schopp here. Glad to have you. Bulldog is off again today, and he'll be off Monday, I think, before returning after that. Although Tuesday, the day I'm expecting him back, is April Fool's Day, so I'm not sure what to expect. Joining me now on the West Her Hotline, expected Buffalo founder Chad DeDominicis to talk some Sabres. Chad, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay. I wasn't even sure earlier today, just by instinct, like if the Sabres are mathematically alive, but are they dead? I realized the problem I was having was that I was dead about it all. But, 10, 11 games left, 9 points. They can't be eliminated left. Not every game is going to be Columbus against Detroit. So you went ahead and tweeted like that they were still in it, and I assume with some sarcasm, but I just want to say, how dare you?
I think the money puck chart that they put out all the time, they actually got themselves back on the chart, though, today. They're back at 0.1%, I think. So
I was looking for that. I didn't see it, but the other day I noticed they were not even shown, which is what made me wonder. They're right back in it. Chad, how will this season be for you, assuming they do fall short, for how annoying it is? I mean, there's the accumulation of the years that just that becomes so much of how we react to it. It's been so long. But won't, with the 5-on-5 play and Thompson's year and maybe a few other things, a couple of other guys having career years, this might be right near the top of seasons in this drought for, just you can't believe it almost.
Yeah, it's up there. It's not as bad as other years, I guess you could say. But the year they missed by a point, it was just like the goaltending. I don't think it's like that this year. A lot of their 5-on-5 numbers as a team, for the most part, are not great. Like their expected goal share, they're near the bottom still, 28th. Their shot share, they've always been near the top, and that's because early in the season they were spamming, low danger shots, and that's kind of carried them. But even that has started to dip. But it's really the scoring and the goal differential. Goal differential at 5-on-5, they're 15th in the league, so 51%. They're one of the highest scoring 5-on-5 teams in the league. They're actually second in the league behind the Capitals, which is insane. But really, it's we're back again. The goaltending, They are 27th in goals against per 60 at 5-on-5. So it's the goaltending, the defense. It's those things that are back up again. And, of course, special teams, power play, penalty kill, runs hot and cold. But really it's the power play from the very beginning has been just dreadful. And this is the second year in a row of that. And that, maybe for me, is the most frustrating thing is that's what you hoped would improve under Ruff. And then you brought in Appert, which really bringing in Appert, you're kind of getting what they had in the AHL, but that's a different conversation. But, yeah, I think the power play really is the most frustrating because if that was just maybe a little bit better, maybe you don't lose 13 games and you're maybe on the playoff spot, but maybe instead of 9 and we're joking around about 0.1%,
right? Maybe
you're 4.
Right.
And, if we get lucky here, get on a run and everybody in ahead of us is losing games, but yet here we are.
It's still not close enough to be that, yeah. The power play thing, it really is confounding with the new head coach, but also the talent is kind of obvious. Last year, too, that you would think you would have enough, scoring talent to be able to, I don't know, maybe this is naive. I guess it is, overcome whatever structural deficiencies you have.
No, it's not a talent issue at all. And, the best example of it is look at Dylan Cousins, who looks like he could not be a power play player at all on this team. He goes to Ottawa for 2 weeks, all of a sudden he's this power play merchant and has all these power play points. And even the one power play goal Ottawa scored against the Sabres, oh man, that's a nice play. Like you rarely, if ever, maybe once a month or once every 3 months, see that kind of play from the Sabres. And after in the beginning of the year, I said, we're not going to sit and just feed Tage for bombs, but really the strategy is just we're just going to give it to Tage and Darlene and shoot and hope, and we'll mix in some nice plays here and there. And it doesn't work. They're not scoring. Obviously, their expected goals per 60 at the power play is 28th in the league, so it's pretty bad. I think there was a joke at the beginning of the year. They were actually a negative goal differential team on the power play at one point. That was very early in the season, but still, that was the thing. So, yeah, pretty bad and frustrating with the talent that they do have.
You definitely don't want that. And when you have that, you're at a game and the Sabres are playing somebody who takes a penalty and somebody around you hear say decline the penalty, and then you have the whole eye roll thing and just the whole dance. Chad DiDomenicis, my guest here on WGR. On goalies, Luukkonen, is this just more throw your hands up? This is goaltending in the NHL. We know the randomness of it is just impossible, almost impossible to overcome. What better explanation would you have for his season?
I don't think I do, to be honest. The way I put it, we've done a lot of work with goaltenders over the last 3 years on the site. Anthony's done a few things about kind of the randomness of it. Last year I really dove into stuff because of the Levi thing that blew up on their face. And it's really, there's only 3 to 4 goaltenders in this league that are going to be consistently year in, year out top great goaltenders. And for the people that are saying, well, they should go out and they should spend, and get a goaltender, a triple or goaltender, I don't really think you need to do that, because unless you're getting one of the top guys, which you're not, you're just getting another version of Luukkonen. In some sense, it could be a more expensive version. The way the goaltenders are getting contracts right now, $4.75 million is not that bad for a goaltender, especially what he's giving you. So really, you got to hope that he bounces back. A lot of the smart people on social media kind of point to Gustafsson in Minnesota. Maybe you get that track. Really good season, got paid pretty bad last year, and now he's back to having a really strong season again. And that's just the up and downs of goaltending. And you just have to hope that, the down years are not as down as this season is for him, and it's more in the middle, and then your up years are closer to what you got last year. And, you kind of just ride that wave. And, of course, improving your defense will help that. Reimer takes over right now, and maybe that's kind of the frustrating thing, too, in the beginning of the season. If you didn't waive Reimer and you kind of just kept him and Devin Levi didn't drown for a month, maybe you have a couple more points on the board, because he has shown he's plenty capable. And funny enough, Anthony's research project 2 years ago, Reimer graded out as one of the more consistent goaltenders year in and year out of what you're getting. And we're kind of seeing that this year. He's not great, but he's not terrible either. He's kind of just in the middle of the pack, and that's what he is once again for them this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's You know, Chad, like it's so easy to pile on the Sabres, and there are reasons to do it. These goalie moves they've made for several years, I've had a hard time being critical. Not that I'm wanting to be necessarily. It's just sort of, I get it. I thought Comrie, like I get it. And you made the point that Adams has made, Kevin Adams, and I've made it, that you don't really know what you're getting. You know, you think you're getting this, but you're getting that. And that's sort of the nature of the position. So other than sort of just pushing Levi in right out of college, and maybe I'm not even sure they really expected that to work, but that's what they did, and it cost them last year. So otherwise, though, like even paying Luukkonen, right? Like even paying him when they did after last year, I guess I want to say it made sense.
Yeah, and I mean, really, if you think about it, like I said, they got it at the right time. I mean, Kevin Lankinen was a goaltender who went into camp on a PTO, then got a job, full-time job, got a job in Vancouver off of that.
Yep.
And then 4 months later, he has a $5.25 million contract. You're like, whoa. So, like, you know, maybe it did make sense to do it when they did. You might not love the 5 years, but that contract isn't immovable. If it really gets to a point where it's not working, you know, you can get out of that. And you have Levi, and they brought another goaltender over. They just signed today, and we'll see how that goes in a few years. But, yeah, I mean, it's in the way to get one of those top guys is to just draft them. So, really, it kind of almost like this joking running back joke is you should probably draft a goalie every year because you don't really know. You know, you just flush your system with them, and maybe one pops out for you, and you get an elite one in there, and then you ride that for 10 years.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, you kind of find the best average goaltender you can and hope you get more ups than you do downs.
Even historically, thinking about the Sabres, like what was Ryan Miller? Like a 5th-round pick or something like that, wasn't he?
Pick, I think, yeah, 5th or 6th, yeah.
What was Hasek? Like kind of a throwaway trade with Chicago? I don't know when he was drafted, but that wasn't like a big move when they got him, and he's the best ever. So I'm listening to this take for sure. So one thing I've been saying is just with going back to before the deadline, signing Zucker, signing Greenway, signing Bryson. I mean, that leaves Reimer as their only UFA, I believe. What do you think? Right. What do you think of the strategy here? If it can be made into one strategy, like individually, I think, my opinion, individually, I couldn't understand why you would do each thing. Maybe Bryson least of all, but the two forwards. But I worry for just how that means less flexibility in the offseason. And I don't want this to be sarcastic, right? Because somebody could easily say, well, if you're the Sabres, what do you need flexibility for? Like, who's going to sign here? I don't want to sort of settle for that.
Right.
How do you see it?
Yeah, it's a tough path to go down. Because like you said, people don't want to hear it, but it's also at the same time it's a real thing. So you have to understand that and appreciate it. And then also the way the no move and no trade clauses in the league that I guess you could say gotten out of hand in a sense, that makes it more difficult too. So you kind of have to really attack those guys in a sense that are like Josh Norris or even a little bit younger maybe that don't have those second contracts or are RFAs, and you can go look for a team that's looking to just make a swap, like a Bo Byram kind of thing, something like that. Look for those guys, and that's how you have to go about it and you have to do it. I mean, this team, really, you mentioned flexibility. Like, they can be as flexible as they want to be. There's ways to get out of things. There's ways to make trades. Like, a lot of people, made you believe that Cousins didn't have much value, and then, oh, look what he got you.
Yep.
So you can find your trades if you really want to. It's just how eager and willing do they want to be. What is going to happen with a few guys? Like Peterka is an interesting one who, there's been a lot of rumors out there that maybe there's some unhappiness on his side. I kind of heard the opposite of that, but, we'll see how that plays out. That could just be an agent thing because his agent's a little bit, one of the more outspoken agents, I guess the way I'll put it.
Okay.
So that could be that to drive up that contract negotiation. But that's going to be interesting to see where that goes and what they want to do with him in the offseason. And then that kind of sets up. And it gets to Byram. I mean, the Chikrin thing that happened, I get it, that Byram's not a UFA this year. He's an RFA, but he's pretty close to UFA status. And, I put a tweet out, if you look at Owen Power, his camp is within, the right to point to that. And I think Owen Power got a little bit over 9% of the cap hit at the time he signed it. And then 9.4 whatever percent of the cap hit at $95 million works out to $9 million. Who here wants to pay Bo Byram $9 million? I don't want to pay him $8. I don't even really want to pay him $7, because the last month has shown that, away from Dahlin, here and there, there's some good moments, but for the most part, it's been pretty dreadful.
Gets buried.
So do you want to pay somebody $7.5 million to $8 or more to just be a Dahlin partner? You can throw almost anybody there and be fine. So there's some big decisions, but they can be really as flexible as they want to be, depending how deep they want to get into restructuring this roster.
But Byram worries me. Well, you didn't say you were worried, but he worries me too, I was going to say, because it feels like the kind of player who's good enough, and they traded for him. Kevin Adams has alluded to this trade many times since he made it, about like the hockey trade aspect of it, and I thought it was a fine idea. But if it helps lead them to a conclusion that they should make him the next whatever, all these defensemen they've signed for such long term and for so much money, I would just hate it. Okay, that it's hard, it's challenging to get guys, and here you've got a guy who may or may not want to stay. But especially if I have to overpay him to be the player, no. It's just an easy no.
Yeah, I'm in the same spot, and I get your whole point if they traded for him, and that Adams has mentioned him, but I would not be surprised if he's not on the team next season. I think there's a reason that they're pulling him away from Dahlin randomly. They didn't just do it to do it when that was working so well. I think they're trying to get an answer on something, and they're probably getting their answer, and it might lead them to do something else. And I think really if it came down to a decision, to be perfectly honest, between Byram and Peterka, they probably lean Peterka, and then that might force them to something else with Byram. And, maybe you swing Byram for a team who's looking to get rid of a top 4 vet. They want to bring in a younger guy and, somebody who believes that he's a power play guy, which I don't think he really is. But if someone wants to think that he is, then, let them take him, let them pay him, and you take the veteran that has a year or two left and put him in your top 4, and then you're on your way.
Assuming your guess or even, your knowledge on this is right about what they're doing with Byram, it still doesn't work for me, looking back at it. Like the right move, if you had to feel this way, but the right move was to trade him at the deadline, and I got to think that would have been possible. Even with an RFA status, the guy is young, and so the next team could think he might be a building block and to help them this year. So I don't know. The way you put it, do the Sabres really need this answer on him?
I don't know. I think maybe it's validation. I do think, I'm pretty sure that they had conversations surrounding him. I do know that he was part of the Elias Pettersson conversations when they had that. He was one of the pieces that they were going to put in that deal if that was to happen. So his name was out there. I think they had conversations about it. But I think what their focus was and what they ultimately got done is they wanted to, they identified the core piece they wanted to change, which was Cousins, and that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to change this core, in a sense, send a message, rip a core piece out of there. If you're trading Byram and you keep Cousins, that's not really sending a message of I'm ripping a core piece out.
No, that's right.
So I think they focused on Cousins, and they figured let's get some more clarifying answers on Byram by moving some things around, and then they can, go at it in the offseason. I don't think it's going to change anything. The same team that would have traded for him in March probably still be interested in June or July. So
okay.
I don't think that really hurts them that much.
I wondered about that because other teams are getting this answer too, right? And that's what I was thinking there.
But some of his numbers, I think, too, there's a couple of things. One, there are teams that will 100% believe, it's the Sabres, get him here, he'll be fine. He was a big part of what he was in Colorado on a good team in their cup run. He also has the offensive numbers. So any general manager is going to see his 5-on-5 production. They're going to see how he played on the power play in Colorado, his skating and all. So he has the flashiness where they'll be like, yeah, I get it. His defense maybe isn't that good, but we have a guy here. We'll put him with him, and we'll in a sense surround him and do all that. So I think there's enough tools and there's enough stuff that you can just watch. And of course, points are still a big thing in this league. that will make him still to be a valuable piece in the offseason.
Reminds me of Montour a little bit in certain ways.
A little bit, yes.
You know?
Yep.
Bring him to us. He's got the Buffalo stink on him. Just bring him over here. We're going to do this. Which team making the playoffs this year, if the Sabres are not to, will be the most annoying? I would say, for me, like it's been the Islanders like 5 different years for this. Just like not even that good. I mean, I'm jealous of all of them. I said at the beginning of the show today, I hate it ranges between 31 and 32 NHL teams. Which team will drive you the craziest if they make it?
Probably whoever ends up at wild card 2 in the East, because they're a terrible team.
Canadians.
Whoever, Canadians, Islanders, Rangers. I mean, it looks like the pace right now is 87, but I'm telling you that wild card 2 team is going to be like 85 points. And it's going to be ridiculous that they're even in. But they're going to play the Capitals and like
maybe win.
I don't know. Like right. I mean, the Capitals. Like I heard you talking about them earlier, and I agree to an extent. Some of their team underlying numbers are more impressive. So, I mean, that kind of leads me to believe they'll be fine and they'll get through the first round at least, especially the team they're going to line up against most likely. Because none of these teams also are walking in with like a powerhouse goaltender that's going to really – oh, well, I guess the Rangers could. But beyond that, I don't really think you have to worry about that. But, yeah, I guess the wild card 2 team, beyond that, I don't know.
That has to be
Blues.
it.
The Blues maybe would be annoying because, like, I don't know, was Bennington going to try to fight people in the series or something like that? Like, but beyond that, it's probably the wild card 2 team in the East.
Yeah, that's it. Ottawa has separated a little bit, and whoever it is, it'll be a pretty easy argument that the Sabres might be better. Bottom line, might be better than that team. Okay, well, let me just ask you honestly: should we still be hopeful?
Like in the future?
For this season, is there any? I mean, I know what I'm asking by this question, but sweep the weekend, and then what?
That's what I keep telling people. Win both games this weekend. Maybe you get a couple more losses, and the team's ahead of you, and then I don't know if you're sitting 5 or 6 points out. Maybe, but I mean, if you look at their schedule coming too, it's not the easiest. So, I mean, and this team always does this. They'll get within, like, well, you know, you get a couple games, and they'll lose 3 in a row, and they're like, well, there goes that.
Just like it happened right after the tournament, right? Where, like, we a little bit talked ourselves into them making a run, and they lost those 2 Canadians games.
Yeah.
So,
I think, like, to get to 85 points, they have to go 10-1. So if that gives you your answer.
10-1, baby. That's how these things have to end. They have to end spectacularly. Like the Bills ending the drought with a -50 point differential and just like getting blown out and starting Peterman. Yet that's the year they make it. For the Sabres, it has to be like this. Like the last time they made it, it was a little bit like this. So, all right. Thank you, Chad.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
ExpectedBuffalo.com, Chad DiDomenicis, our guest. I know. I can't see. This is the problem Bulldog and I both face all the time about the Sabres. Like, even to sort of ask the question is like, I feel just imagining someone driving in their car being like, Schopp, really again? But how would you handle it if it's like your kid's team? Play to the whistle. And we haven't heard the whistle yet. So Flyers tomorrow, an actually mediocre Washington team that leads the conference, if not the NHL in points. I don't know. 803-0550 to comment. NFL draft as well. Yesterday I did baseball. It was really fun hearing from listeners who were telling me why their favorite baseball team is their favorite baseball team. I might have, a little bit of interest in a couple more of those. We'll see what happens. Thanks for listening. Bulldog is off today. Mike Schopp here on WGR.
Sabres game tonight as they are preparing for a road back-to-back starting tomorrow. They take on Philly at 1 p.m. For more on yesterday's win, and also Sabres announcement that goaltender Tobias Lehtonen signs a 3-year entry-level contract with the club that'll begin in 2025-26. Our own Paul Hamilton has pieces up at our website, WGR550.com. In college football, Colorado is giving head coach Deion Sanders a 5-year, $54 million contract. Sanders just 13-12 in his first 2 years at Colorado, but did improve this year to a 9-4 record, and Travis Hunter also won the Heisman Trophy with the Buffaloes. Over in Major League Baseball, Mets and Blue Jays in action today. Toronto hosts Baltimore. First pitch just after 7. The Mets are down in Texas, take on Houston, start time just after 8. And the Bisons got opening day off to a winning start as they take down Rochester 6-2. And then coming up later tonight on WGR, second half of the men's bracket of the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament. Again, at 7, Ole Miss versus Michigan State will get the night going just after 7:30. Kentucky versus Tennessee, 9:30. Auburn takes on Michigan. And then depending on how quickly these games will end, around at 10 o'clock, Houston will take on Purdue. And coverage of the NCAA Championship Tournament on WGR and the Bet 1520, both today and this weekend, is brought to you by Window Nation. For all your window needs, visit windownation.com. That's Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of business. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Kulik up top, scores! What a shot! Yuri Kulik! And it's 5-1 Buffalo.
Sabres romp over the Penguins. Nice to talk to Chad DiDomenicis just now from Expected Buffalo. The takeaway line for me from him, because I've been just sort of complaining about, sure, keep all your free agents, run it back, right? Like, how will that go over? What will that be, more importantly? In a vacuum, I guess, Greenway, Zucker, McLeod has been good. Like, they've had guys who have really performed, at least so Greenway. I mean, he's had injuries, but other guys who've really performed pretty much as well as you could have wanted. And so, in that sense, sure, bring them back. If they want to be here, pay them, whatever. But it's also this idea that, well, I can't do other things. Other ideas come up. Somebody calls and they've got a player available that you didn't expect. Just different. I want to have balls in the air. I want to be able to do different creative things to my roster. Being a team that's going so long without winning, I feel like that is paramount. And this strategy sort of precludes that. But Chad said they could be as creative as they want to be. There are ways. And yeah, that's right. And I should remind myself of that. Because it's not enough just to say, like, well, there's not that much room on the roster now. You make room. You figure it out. And the Sabres have, among other things, like they have been unwilling, unable to be creative enough to give themselves that edge that other teams enjoy. That's taking on, remember when Patrick Marleau was traded, I think, to Carolina? And really just to... The Leafs got a draft pick or something. They got out from a contract they didn't want. Carolina just took it, and maybe they got the draft pick, whatever it was. Like, just a way to sort of fiddle around with the cap. Hockey has kind of always had loopholes for whatever reason. Like, I'm thinking of Marian Hossa right now and a deal that he got with a top team, Chicago or Detroit, where, like, they didn't pay him anything, but it was, I don't know, deferred. I don't remember. Just... It's kind of been like a staple in Sabres life that they're not going to do the outside kind of thing that can give them that edge that other teams, some other teams at least, will do. And really that just comes down to foresight and creativity and then money, right? I mean, anybody could have, I would think every general manager has seen moves like that, but they don't all work for teams that would do it. And they're not all either. There aren't that many guys like this. Maybe there are more than I think, but there's only a small number of players that sort of fit this criteria where they're not going to play anymore. But, you take on the contract and they just basically don't exist, but they're on your books. That kind of thing. Byram, maybe Chad is right. I respect him very much that he'll be the same kind of commodity, so to speak, in the offseason that he would have been at the deadline or is now. I didn't mean that you wouldn't have made the Cousins trade if you had flipped Byram. I was thinking you could do that anyway and sort of make the decision that, I don't have a player here that I want to invest big in, and that's what I'm going to have to do if I keep him, or else he's going to get away for nothing. That's simply what that is. And I still think that's the case when it comes to him. And, I want the Sabres to be a team, not that this is to say I have to be right in this case, but to be a team that sort of gets a jump on it, has the answers before it's too late, and can figure out what they've got and then act with conviction accordingly. And maybe sometimes they're afraid to trade away young pieces because of all the many times it's burned them. And those are often for different circumstances, and they're not all under Adams' employ. But, Eichel and Reinhart famously, how they got away and then they went and won cups, just like it's embarrassing. So Byram has already won once, and he goes to a good team. I mentioned Montour as a comparison, and then they win. And they're their best selves. And the Sabres have not mostly been able to get the best version of their players. Cousins is the latest, who, it's only a few games for him so far, and we'll see if he's ever the player he was a couple of years ago. He doesn't have to be, but right away, sort of immediately was, oh yeah, this guy has been a player, and he just was not helping me at all. So it goes on. If you have a thought on it, and I don't blame you if you don't, okay. 803-0550 is the number. Chad also mentioned goal differential when we were talking about 5-on-5. The teams on the outside of the playoff race in the East, the Sabres goal differential, period, including special teams, is almost as good as anybody. Just the Rangers, Columbus are a few goals under. Buffalo is -22. The Islanders are -19 and are 8 points ahead. The Red Wings are -23, worse, and are 6 points ahead. Boston is -50 and is ahead. Philadelphia is -50, ahead in points. The Penguins are -57, ahead in points. It's always something. Well, we'll see what the weekend brings. Philadelphia is bad, and Washington is not bad, but I don't think great, even though they've had a great season. So maybe we can have something to talk about on Monday. I'd give a lot for it. I'd love to have it. Just the likeliest scenario for this season at this point is it ends, they kind of split their remaining games, and they finish 8 or 10 points out, and it's kind of how it always has felt. The best case scenario is the miraculous run. Chad says they need to go 10-1, something like that. Also in there is, and it's kind of I've already been feeling it the last week, they win enough games to just miss. And that will make us all crazy. You'd rather they lose by finish farther out than barely miss, because of all the, just like 2 years ago, all the games and the potential movement, the things you could have done differently to break this drought for once and for all, but ended up not being able to do it. I don't know if I want the Sabres to miss by one game again. If they do that, though, it's going to be a kind of fun final 3 weeks. Yesterday, opening day in the major leagues, I meant to look this up, but I'm going to wing it. So the Yankee game we were talking about through the day, was on in here, ended with Jackson Chourio of the Brewers against former Brewer Devin Williams, bases loaded, I think it was bases loaded. The game was on the line. And Chourio, who is this very exciting prospect, good rookie outfielder from Milwaukee, struck out, I think on a 3-2 pitch, struck out to end the game, and it was his fifth time striking out in the game. And that's pretty rare for a guy to strike out 5 times in a 9-inning game. But I have been to a game where I saw it happen. The one game I've ever been to at Dodger Stadium, it was in 2010, which I'll always know because my son was 10 months old. And so, like, okay, he was born, carry the one. So 2010, we went to Anaheim, we went to San Diego, we went to L.A. There used to be a team, it's still there in Anaheim. It just doesn't call itself Anaheim anymore. Marketing. Jason Hayward, still in the game. Jason Hayward for the Braves. Might have been batting second, you kind of want to be up in the order. Churio batted leadoff yesterday. Kershaw pitched for L.A., also still in the game. And Hayward struck out 5 times in a 9-inning game. And it was just like the Brewers yesterday. They lost, maybe yesterday was 5-4, some score like that. I will probably always remember that day. It was the day John Wooden died. And a lot of what the Dodgers did that night, naturally, was to pay respects to him, Vin Scully on the scoreboard and everything, the late Vin Scully. I was watching them last night, and also a game that came right down to the end, 5-4 up, Tigers 2 on, 9th inning, and I heard the organist play Birds of a Feather. And there's almost nothing better in baseball than the Dodgers organ music choices. I loved it. Billie Eilish. Time out here. We'll talk some more. Again, lines open for your calls. This is Mike Schopp on WGR. Welcome back, Mike Schopp here. I've had the Golf Channel on in here today because no baseball. I didn't find Rockies Rays anywhere. Although, I've liked the point on Twitter today how the Rays home white uniforms actually look cool given that they're playing outside. So maybe it was sportslogos.net that had the tweet. And, you know, they've had games, I guess other games in the past where they did wear the whites outdoors somewhere and guys in all-star games. So you have seen these before, but the way that, you know, Bulldog's not here to jump on this, the way that Tropicana field kind of makes everything look dingy. Yeah, looks like they've got maybe a kind of a cool vibe this year against in their game today, opening day for the Rays against the Rockies. Classic matchup. The Sabres, by the way, we're talking about them. They have won 10 of their last 12 home games. So at least you know you're going down there and maybe just sort of trying to block out the big picture and the standings and everything like that. Like last night, if you are able to do that, would have been a party. And they've had some really good results here in the last, what's that, about a month? 10-2 at home. Went through the goal differential stuff. That's just going to make you crazy. Maybe they can still pull something out. Yeah, no afternoon baseball other than that one game that I can't find. So Golf Channel, which we have on a lot, Thursday, Friday afternoons. This one today, though, it's been a rain delay since basically whenever I turned it on. So they're talking to golfers. You know, that's basically I'm realizing that's what I've been watching all day is just like golf talk with the sound down. But Roger Clemens was just on. They're in Houston this week, and Golf Channel was interviewing Roger Clemens, and I can't hear it, but they put a graphic up from the night he struck out 20 batters. It was against Seattle, and it said on the graphic that he played 27 holes of golf the day before that. So you pitchers out there, that might be the secret. Sam Panayotovich joins us on Fridays. I talked to him about the tournament and some NFL future stuff. We'll have that for you next here on WGR.